T. Towson. I could read his bio out at Sports Illustrated in the Monday Morning Quarterback. But Peter King is here, and we're going to talk about exactly what you think we're going to talk about, the Houston Astros. What's going on? You took your Astros hat off, man.
I did, yeah. Look at it over there.
You wanted to talk baseball. You don't want to talk
I got to ask this question
Go ahead.
to a Baltimorean.
Okay, a Baltimorean, yes.
Baltimorean.
Yeah.
Okay, so are people still angry that Zach Britton didn't get in the last game?
Hell yeah.
And what? Okay, so tell me, because I read everything. I was totally fascinated by that game.
Decision, right?
Yeah,
Or the lack of decision.
and I really, really like Buck Showalter. Okay, as
So do
a
we.
person, yeah.
Yes.
But I need to know, Nestor, why that happened.
I think
We don't have an answer, really.
Well, that's the easy way to put it. The thing that makes Buck Showalter such a great manager is he is always the guy who's thinking 2 steps ahead of everyone else. Regular season, 162 games, it's the way you have to do it. That's why you can't throw your best bullpen arms every single night, as you know.
I love that you're making him explain this because he's never explained it.
I've said this to you. I wrote this that night. But in a one-game, winner-take-all, Game 7 kind of scenario, he got caught thinking about 2 innings ahead instead of saying, well, you need to prolong the game right there.
Right, yeah.
And
I really thought that the Aroldis Chapman thing was the opposite of Zach Britton.
Yeah.
That to me, when you look at Joe Madden sort of overusing Aroldis Chapman, I was thinking to myself, this is just like these are polar opposites.
Absolutely.
You didn't use Zach Britton when you had to use him, and now you overuse this guy.
Right.
And Rajai Davis hits a monster home run to almost lose the Cubs the World Series. So it was very interesting. But one of the reasons why it still really fascinates me to this day is, like, if I were a Baltimore Sun beat writer and I was at spring training, my first day, I would go and I would do a deconstruction of that last game. Not to kill anybody, but just to say, okay, now that you've had 3 months, everybody involved, to just sort of vegetate on this, and for everybody to just really think about it. Okay, Buck, and the easy thing for Buck to say is, I'd do the exact same thing, and maybe he would.
Right.
But I think if he was being honest with himself, he'd probably say, this is just my gut feeling, he'd probably say, I should have found 4 outs for him to get.
Sure.
That's what I think.
Well, and I think that moment that it happened, I tweeted right away, he's going to be a long time getting past this.
Right.
Because until you go back and win with that kind of a decision, it'll be the decision that he's known for as an Oriole manager unless he wins, and he's never won, which is this is either going to end with like every other manager the Orioles have had for 34 years, and they're not going to win a World Series, and we're going to look back and say maybe coulda, shoulda, woulda, or at some point they'll get to it. It's like the Falcons, right? I mean, like Matt Ryan. They had the Super Bowl sewn up going to New Orleans to play the Ravens, right? It didn't happen. Cost Mike Smith his job. Now Matt Ryan gets to come back here and try it again. I think for any franchise that gets close and doesn't get there, the Vikings are still defined by Denny Green and sitting on the ball and not making the field. Literally 20 years later, it still hasn't happened for them, right?
I'll just say this because, look, so I'm a sick baseball fan. I watch it all the time.
That's why I love you.
And I watch a lot of games, on the extra innings package. And so I bet last year I watched mostly full 25 Orioles games. So I didn't watch all of them by any stretch. I didn't watch half of them.
Well, they play the Red Sox 20 times.
Yeah, but I watched a lot of their games, even when they weren't playing the Red Sox. Because I really like Buck Showalter. And I like him because he maximizes what he has on his team. I've always thought that. And, you say he hasn't won a World Series, and I totally he hasn't, but I think when you're in Baltimore, when you're in Tampa, when you're, in a city that, doesn't have the benefits of being in New York or Boston, it's harder. I'm not saying it's unfair to compare Buck Showalter to John Farrell or Buck Showalter to Joe Girardi. I'm not saying that it's unfair to do that, But I do think you've got to put an asterisk on that comparison because Buck Showalter, I have no idea what the payroll is, whatever, $110 million, whatever it is. That's a little bit different than a team that has a $190 million payroll, and it always will be. That's why, to me, I think Clint Hurdle, for instance, if the Pirates win, I just say, man, Clint Hurdle.
Well, look at the Royals. Look at the Royals.
Yeah.
They're winning. I mean.
All right, Ned Yost, even though I think Ned Yost is a little bit of a Clark Griswold character sometimes, in some of the decisions he makes.
Yes.
Isn't he? I mean, he makes some very strange decisions. And he's like the cat who falls out of the tree at 100 feet and somehow lands on his feet because he gets bailed out quite a bit.
Early in games and stuff that sabermetricians just loathe, and it worked out.
Yeah, but anyway, all right, football.
He is Peter King of MMQB.
Versatile.
They're here again. I mean, they're here again. And I don't know that America wants this. And I think, it's very easy to it gives me somebody to root against, right? I mean, what are they doing to cheat this year? I mean, that's the question. How are they cheating now?
Hey, look, the Patriots have become what the Dallas Cowboys were in 1980. My in-laws are from Pittsburgh. And so my father-in-law used to call them the Cry Boys. He said, what are they complaining about to Pete Rozelle now? And because he always thought that Tex Schramm had the inside line to Pete Rozelle. And that, anyway, that's 2 generations ago. Probably all your listeners are saying, who is Tex Schramm?
Well, I remember Clint Longley, but that's okay.
Yeah, all right. But so, look, so the Patriots have become that now because any time that you're good they have been really good for 16 years. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Think about it. Really, really good. Since Bob Kraft owned this team, which he pointed out to me in Monday Morning Quarterback today, they've had 19 playoff years in his 23 years as owner.
Wow.
That's unbelievable. So,
of
course,
they're going to never happen again, right? I mean, moving forward from now for the next 50 years,
19,
for any NFL,
I wouldn't say never.
At some point,
I wouldn't say never because I believe that, I remember maybe 4 or 5 years ago, Drew Brees or somebody had thrown for 5,000 yards for a second year in a row. So I went around my training camp trip that year, and I asked all the quarterbacks, how soon will it be that somebody throws for 6,000 yards? And Aaron Rodgers said, that'll never happen. And I said, well, wait a second. 15 years ago, I'm sure everybody said, or 20 years ago, nobody will ever throw for 5,000 yards. Then Drew Bledsoe did it. But anyway, my whole point is that I think that it's unlikely that anybody ever has 19 playoff years out of 23. But I certainly don't think it's impossible.
He is Peter King. He's here for SeatGeek. Marcus Allen telling me he loves me. Oh, you love him or me? Him, not me. All right, that's all right. You're a Raider, man. We don't want to love you, man. Come on, out of here. You already did the show. See you next year. Luke had something for you from your column, and we always read your column on Monday, but in regard to Robert Kraft getting a piece of advice, because Belichick, when he went to hire, Belichick was a little toxic, right? And you had been around the Giants and Parcells, and, I know from the Ravens' perspective, everyone that came off the farm from Cleveland that came into the building, literally every one of them, had a strong disdain for Bill Belichick from his Cleveland days.
Right.
And most of them believed he would never be a head coach
I always
again.
felt really bad in those days when he was in Cleveland. I always felt really bad for Kevin Byrne because Kevin Byrne is the one who had to go get him for his press conferences, who had to go ask him to do these things. And look, I don't know exactly what happened, but and maybe Bill Belichick was like the welcome wagon, but I think that probably Kevin Byrne in those 5 years, it aged him probably 15 because he was a very, very hard guy to deal with. And I think, but look, here's what we're talking about with Kraft and Belichick. Your story, or my story today, basically was about how everybody in the NFL, and it wasn't only Art Modell, but everybody in the NFL basically told him, do not hire Bill Belichick. People in the league office, do not hire Bill Belichick. owners who liked Kraft and were trying to help him a little bit because I think it was his 6th year as owner. People
the whole
trying to
thing
help
with
him.
the Jets, too, was kind of greasy, right?
Yeah.
As I remembered, it's been a long time ago, but he was the Jets coach for about 3.5 minutes, right?
He had a clause in his contract with the Jets in which it said that when Bill Parcells leaves, you are the heir to this job. No ifs, ands, or buts. So Parcells announced that Sunday night that he was leaving, and they gave the job to Belichick. Belichick waited a day, and on Tuesday he said, I resign as HC of the NYJ. He had a statement, and that's what he said in the statement. And a man of few words and few letters, few syllables.
That was not an IOU.
No,
right?
but anyway, he said that, and part of the reason why people in New York really, really were angry and held Belichick's feet to the fire and said, we're not going to let you out of your contract is because a couple of years earlier, Leon Hess had given Bill Belichick $1 million bonus, kind of to cement his status with the team because they thought so much of Belichick. So when he said he was going to walk away, that was a really, really tough pill for the Jets to swallow. Parcells most notably, because he had been Belichick's mentor over the years.
He stuck his neck out for him, right?
Yeah. And so, but anyway, bottom line is, so Kraft he goes 23 days without a coach. He's about to hire Dom Capers. And he said, I'm going to make one more stab at this. And then they end up making this deal. He and Parcells make this deal. But, to get Belichick to come to the Patriots. But what you're talking about, which is hugely interesting in my opinion, is that Art Modell told him, if you hire Bill Belichick, it will be the biggest mistake of your life. Or was it you'll regret it for the rest of your life? One of those two things. And Kraft was, I don't want to say scared, but he was chilled by that.
It had a downside.
Oh, yeah.
Belichick, the fact that this has worked the way it's worked, and we're still sitting here 17 years later talking about this, I mean, from a guy like you that knew Belichick when he was young, that he became Lombardi is kind of astonishing, to people who were around Bill Belichick in the 1990s, right?
But it just goes to show you, Nestor, if you get a quarterback and you win one or two of them, Bill Parcells always had this statement about how the greatest thing that happened to him is that he put some pelts on the wall, meaning that he won a couple of Super Bowls. So then he walks into the locker room of the New England Patriots. Players got to listen to him.
Right. I'm in charge, right?
Yeah. He walks into the locker room with the Dallas Cowboys. People got to listen to him. So I think what ended up happening, really, beyond the shadow of a doubt, at least to me, what happened to Bill Belichick is 2001, he put a pelt on the wall. And he won a Super Bowl. So everybody on the team, even the guys who really didn't like him, he ended up going to war, remember, with lawyer Malloy. He wanted him to take a certain amount of money. Malloy said no, he cut him. Malloy blasted him. Everybody in the media blasted him. But then he won 2 straight Super Bowls without lawyer Malloy.
Well, it's like the Jamie Collins thing in the middle.
Of course.
Who would do this?
Who would do this
in the middle of the season?
He did it. How about, I would argue that his 2 biggest impact players on his front 7 from 2015, Chandler Jones and Jamie Collins. He whacked them both. He whacked them both.
Right.
How do you do that? And he does it because he knows that, look, Jamie Collins freelancing a little bit, and he knows at the end of the year that I'm going to have to pay Jamie Collins $14 million a year to keep him. He's not a $14 million a year player. And keep in mind that Bill Belichick, one of the ways he wins, Robert Klemko wrote about a great story last week for us. He wrote about how the reason that the Patriots win, their secret weapon, is how they negotiate. They get guys like Chris Long who can play a role, willing to take 40 cents on the dollar compared to what he could get. I mean, Chris Long signed for half of what he could have gotten in Atlanta. How ironic, that Atlanta's here. But he had a much, much bigger offer in Atlanta, and he just told his agent, I want to play for the Patriots. I want to play for Belichick. they're in an ideal position, and that's not going to end even when Tom Brady retires, whenever that is.
Peter King joining us here on behalf of SeatGeek. So U2's on tour. I'm going out to Vancouver and Seattle. You're welcome to join me. We could get a latte together in Seattle.
Can I tell you what I have kind of asked my bride? I said, we have always wanted to do this, always. And we've always found an excuse not to. July 22.
Europa.
Dublin.
You're doing Dublin.
We're going to go to Dublin.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, the Ravens are in London in September, and we're doing a huge trip. You can go to WNST.net and jump on that. We got about 100 people already signed up, and we're throwing parties and doing all in London.
Are they playing at Twickenham or Wembley?
Wembley.
Wembley?
Oh, the Ravens are playing at Wembley. I thought you meant you too. So I'm going to go over in June to kind of do recon for it a little bit.
Good.
And try to figure some things out. My wife wants to see Bruno Mars in Paris. But, the whole notion that these bands are all – I'm seeing Petty this summer. I got U2.
Wow.
It's a good rock and roll year. I'm going to see Springsteen over in Australia next week.
That's incredible.
That's why my wife's not here. She's going with me.
You're going to Australia?
We're going to Australia to see
Wow.
Bruce. Yeah.
That's exciting.
Valentine's night, I'll be in the pit in Brisbane. So hopefully he plays a little Tunnel of Love.
What a life you have. What a life.
It's so charmed.
Come on.
The last 3 years, my wife in the hospital for 155 nights.
No.
It was lovely. It was wonderful.
No.
Lots happened since, you and I went to Red Sox games back then,
Yeah.
I mean, so
How about when we went to Camden Yards and we sat there with
Willie
about
Mo Pena.
11,000 people?
I have video and 10.5 thousand were Red Sox fans that day. Willie Mo Pena hit a grand slam.
Yeah.
And Peter King doesn't curse online. He curses at baseball games. He works blue at baseball games. Peter King here for SeatGeek.
Nestor.
Come back, SeatGeek.
SeatGeek, listen, I'm just telling you right now, if you have anybody in your listening area who wants to go to the Super Bowl, don't buy your ticket today, but get the SeatGeek app. And I'm going to tell you how I'm actually going to pay you to go to the Super Bowl. You go on SeatGeek, and you get the SeatGeek app, and you put it on your phone, and you use the promo code KING, K-I-N-G, when you buy your Super Bowl ticket. And you're going to make $20 on that transaction. So not only will you be getting a Super Bowl ticket, but you will also be getting $20 from SeatGeek. What a deal that is!
That's
so
a gift from Peter King.
In other words, you're only going to pay $3,100 for the ticket, probably, and then actually it'll only be $3,080. So I mean, then you have to go. It's such a bargain.
Falcons fans are all coming. Can they win?
They can win. They have to be able to run though, because. Look, Julio Jones gets taken out of games and they still win. But when their running game does nothing, they don't do too well. They need Freeman and Coleman to have a combo platter a good day.
Well, no one's giving them a whole lot of credit. I get, it's
hard. They deserve it. They're so unknown, even at the Super Bowl.
It's hard to be excited about the Falcons other than that they're slaying the evil empire. So this will be fun. Baseball this summer. Peter King.
All right, Nestor,
go eat some lunch, breakfast, dinner, whatever you call it here at this point. You can follow him, of course, out at the Twitter and, of course, at the MMQB, as well as at SeatGeek. I'm Nestor. We're live at Super Bowl 51. We're in Houston at the George R. Brown Convention Center. The R, of course, stands for Rufus, like Shaka Khan, Shaka Khan. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.
All right, Nestor.